Welcome to the World of Horror Podcast, episode 87. I'm Mom.
And I'm Mac.
This is the podcast where we share our love of international horror. Fear is universal, but we are not afraid of subtitles.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me pull up,
You just have to say wohos.
Oh! Wohos!
This week, Mac's genre pick is early creature features with an interesting application of effect movies.
You know that genre?
The genre that we're all familiar with. We reviewed The Creeping Flesh from the UK and YOKAI 100 Monsters from Japan. Before we get into it, fair warning, these discussions will include spoilers and language which may not be suitable for all listeners. Let's move on to our first segment. Mom and Mac chat. Hi, Mac. How's it going?
Hi. It's good. How are you?
I'm good, too.
Good.
It's a very pretty fall this fall.
It really is. Like, I'm looking at the sun shining right now, and some of the leaves are starting to turn. Gorgeous.
Yes. Breathtaking.
Breath gone. I'm not.
Can't breathe.
I'm not doing it. Help.
So sometimes where we live, we don't get a spring, and sometimes we don't get a fall, but this year we got both, so.
Lucky.
Yeah.
Climate change.
Yeah. I don't know, but it's really pretty fall here, so that's good.
How's your week been?
Well, I don't know what's going on with me physically. I feel fine, like, right at the moment, but I took a nap right after work, and my Garmin says I'm getting, like, 8 hours of sleep.
Okay.
It's not solid. Like, it'll be, like, 4, and then I'll wake up and be up for 2 hours, and then get 4 more or whatever. But I'm just so tired all the time, and so I don't know what's going on with that, but I thought I was really sick yesterday. Like, I thought I must have the flu or the COVID, but nope, no fever, no nothing.
Are you taking vitamin D?
Yes.
That's the only thing I know. So if you're checking that box, I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, compared to how I felt before my nap, I feel great now.
That's
so
good.
Yeah.
Maybe you just need more sleep.
I mean, I guess.
Like a cat.
Yeah. But let's see. So I have next week, my students are doing presentations. So that's always good. I was so smart. I'm like, thank you, past me. This was so smart of me to like plan like 3 weeks of material and then they present.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. This is like amazing. So I get a breather every 3 weeks. So they present next week and then I teach for 3 more weeks and then we're done, buddy. We're done. Nice. I know. I cannot wait for Christmas this year.
How long is your break?
Well, depends on who you ask. Officially, I think I have to get grades in like on the 12th. And then I go back on the 3rd. But I'll probably get my grades in a few days before that, so.
Nice. Maximize chill time.
Yeah. Well, what's going on with you?
Well, I started my new job. It is good so far. Like, truly, I really can't complain because all the work that they have me doing, I like. They already have a lot of systems in place, so it's kind of like they already have all the machines, and I'm just like, putting all the settings into the machines and then running it. And so, I mean, it's really not hard at all. I mean, it's kind of technical at first, but it didn't, like, compared to my last job where, okay, for instance, the other day my manager was like, oh, sorry, I have all these, like, really bad data sheets and I need you to consolidate them and, make them look nice and check for any errors. And I was like, this was what it was like normally. Like, that's what I did before, was take all this stuff that looked horrible and be like, okay, like go through the dredges of it and be like, well, that doesn't fit and that doesn't fit. So I was like, actually, this is like what I'm more used to. It's more unusual for me to be like, oh, I just have to like run a query, change the date, and I'm done. That's crazy. So I like it so far, and they really don't ask too much of me. Like, I mean, I'm sure that will change, but for right now, it's chill. And they don't want to meet very often, which I like.
Well, yeah, that's always a bonus.
And when we do meet, like, I really don't mind my manager. She's really nice. And I don't know, like, I hope it continues to be as good. And I'm so glad I quit my job, especially because I have a friend who still works at previous job. And they basically just took over my role completely. Like, I trained them. And every time I talk with them, I'm like, how's it going? And they're always like, really bad. And they're always like, yeah, it's somehow getting worse. And yeah, so every day I'm like, I made the best decision. I was right.
I was talking to my therapist the other day, and just about how I don't want to take my job too seriously. And I mean, it's not the kind of job where you clock in and clock out and then you're done. Yeah. So, but I was like, what if it were though? Like, what if I could get it so that I put in, my hours on the clock, and then I clock out.
That's what it should be.
That's what I'm going to try to do next semester. And I have some ideas. Most of them involve trying to get them to review the material, like, say, every 2 weeks or something like that. But I'm not sure exactly how to do that because I hate quizzes, but whatever. They're all teenagers now that I teach.
Oh, wow.
So I'm trying to turn everything into a game because they're like, how many points is this? Or, so like, I'm going to give them 10 points every time they show up to class, which will be a pain in the ass, but
it is effective.
Yeah. I don't know. So it's just an adjustment. And I said a few shows ago, I wanted to quit my job, but I just had to make some changes in my mind. And I love doing art, and I love doing this, and love working out. So if I can just, focus on that, as that's my life. And then there's this other thing I do that funds my life. Yeah. But it's not like
your life.
All I am or something like that. That I do. So that's what I'm working on.
And I feel like if I had a lot of teachers in school who were like, if you try to email me after this point, I won't respond to you. Like, I won't do it. So if you need something, do it on time. And I feel like that's a good skill for people to learn too, because some tough love I got from one of my professors when I started college is she was like, if you are somebody who is pulling all-nighters or doing stuff like that, like, you need to change that because you won't get, your life will not be good, basically. Like, that's not good. That's not just a style of working. Like, you shouldn't do that. And she's like waiting till the last minute on everything. She's like, other people aren't doing that. And like, I don't know, just like when I hear also you saying about like students who are like, hey, I know I didn't do anything, but like, what can I do to get an A? You should be tough with them because who's going to otherwise, like, you have to learn that, hey, if you don't do shit, you don't get shit, and other people have boundaries too. Like, you can't bend everybody's schedule to your schedule. So I think that teaches them, like, if you were to let them email you at like midnight and respond at like 12:30 a.m., I feel like that just teaches them that like everybody will accommodate you, and they won't.
Yeah, well, I mean, I used to be that teacher. One thing I did maybe a year ago was I took my work email off my phone. So in order for me to check my email, I have to log into my laptop. And yeah, I only do that a couple times a day. I'm not available all the time.
Yeah.
So, and that has saved my sanity big time. So I recommend that.
I could never go to having any email on my phone because it's like, even if you're like, oh, I won't check it, if it's there, you will. And it's like having a little piece of work with you at all times. Like, no, thank you. I put my work laptop like under my desk because I'm just like, I'm done. I'm not looking at this.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's a good way to do it, I think. I feel a lot better since I've done that because, and this isn't really fair to Quinn, but I'll be like, if there's something really important, can you let me know?
Yeah.
But they do wait to the last minute. But another thing that I did was instead of making everything due on Sunday, it's due on Monday. So, and I see half of them on Monday anyway, so I can remind them like to their faces, like, but whatever, it's fine, it's good.
Is it?
Well, it's an adjustment. I've had to make a pretty big adjustment because it's not the way it used to be, just because, and they're just different. They're just a different breed, but that's okay. I mean, I told one group, kind of like in a shitty way, but I was like, you guys are teaching me a lot about how I need to teach my next class. That's true. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to give them like a piece of paper or something and say, this is what you need to know by the end of the next 2 weeks. So, and then teach it to them and then test them on it. I don't know. So it's just, but it's so different than the way I learned. And
yeah.
So, but that's fine. I can do it their way. I don't really care as much as I used to.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
I mean, it is, because it's not as if, I don't know, like, it's not as if teachers are, especially in North Carolina, like, treated well. So,
yeah.
And you are doing a good job. It's not as if you're just like, whatever, fuck these kids, I feel like a mix of both. Because if you do just keep going hard, you will quit. Because you'll be like, I hate my life and I can't do anything. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and, it's hard because I see most of my colleagues just like, I'm done. I'm over it. Everybody I know wants to quit and do something else. And there's just like, and I actually love being in the classroom, but it's just feel like I'm repeating myself, but I just had to sort of get over it. And like, instead of pretending like instead of wanting it to be different, than just understanding the way it is.
Yeah.
So that's all I can do, or quit. But, that's a whole rigmarole that I don't want.
It is pretty exhausting, I will say. Like, it is a little bit soul-sucking to find a job. It's kind of horrible. I feel bad for anybody looking for a job right now.
Well, yeah, and it's one thing to be looking when you're 26, it's another thing to be looking when you're 53. So, I feel like I used my antique value card up like 7 years ago when I got this job. So I don't know. I don't want to push it,
Yeah.
But hey, Mac, I have a question for you.
Sure.
What were your favorite watches from September?
One moment. Pull out my letterbox. I watched a lot of movies in September.
We're going to do this on the very next show that we do, and we'll look at our favorite watches from October. And oh boy, did I watch a lot of movies in October.
I'm trying to find. Okay. Diary.
Dear Diary.
Okay. So, my favorite views from September. I watched a movie called Bug that was really interesting. It was from 2006, and it had Michael Shannon. In it. Yeah, who we love. Love him.
Yes, of course.
It was a really fucked up movie and not a good portrayal of mental illness, but it did surprise me a lot. And I mean, I was just talking to some other people about this. I'm like, not that it's a good thing. We should definitely move away from the problematic depictions of mental illness in horror movies, but it is just kind of a thing. Like, if you were like, I'm never going to watch a horror movie with mental illness, like a bad depiction, you'll never watch a horror movie then, you know?
Yeah.
So with all that being said, I thought it was really good, barring that. And also, got to give another shout out to Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, because it was just great watching it over again. And a dishonorable mention to the Resident Evil movies. I watched 5 of them in succession, and they're all bad.
Oh, okay. Well,
I can say definitively, they're all bad. All of them. They don't get better. They only get worse.
Yeah, I've never seen any of them. And
don't.
And okay, well, that's good to know.
I mean, like, truly, they were nice to watch while I was drawing, because it was like, oh, I don't need to look at this because it's horrible. But God, it is just amazing. I know it's like kind of joked about now, the whole like a black person gets killed first in a horror movie, but it is just wild how that is so true though. Like, when you really think about it, it was like almost every movie I watch sometime. Like in the second Resident Evil, there's a character who was in the first one. No, excuse me. The third Resident Evil, there was a black character in the second one who lived amazing. And then in the third one, he risks everybody's life because he gets bitten by a zombie, doesn't tell anyone, and dies. And there's a black woman who's only a character to be his girlfriend, and she's the first one who dies. And I'm just like, why? Like, how do you not look at yourself and say, seems as though we're killing all the black characters first? Like, nobody thinks about that? It's wild to me.
I mean, I would guess that even, even the writer is like, okay, well, after the black person dies, then,
right?
I mean, it's got to be somewhat intentional.
It has to be. I just watched it's like a sequel, the Blair Witch sequel from 2016. Same thing. First person who gets bodily harm done to them, a black woman. Then a black man dies. And nobody goes looking for him. Like, nobody cares. Why? Like, I was like screaming at my screen, like, this doesn't make, like, this is not even good writing. Like, if you brought your best friends, your best friend goes missing in the Blair Witch forest, and then you're like, he's fine. No, he's dead, okay? He's dead.
Well, I was thinking about, I mean, I never wrote my thesis, which is basically about how American literature, including movies, is obsessed with maiming black people's bodies,
It's true.
No, it's true. I mean, usually if you have like the black best friend or something like that, that's the person who gets like captured by the bad guy and like fucked up, and it's really messed up. And I do think that, and there are exceptions, like I was just thinking of Fresh. I mean, the black woman's body is maimed, but so is the lead ladies. All the women are mutilated. And the black woman in Fresh is the smartest woman, the most savvy person. So there are exceptions, but it's almost like they stand out because you're like, oh wow, okay, she survives and she's,
intact.
Yeah, so
like it's why I could never. It's interesting. I never, and maybe people did talk about this, and I just didn't see it. But when Ex Machina was getting all this love, it was like the biggest thing that stood out to me in that movie was like there's a moment where they have like a robot body of a black woman, and it's just so disturbing. Like she doesn't have a head or something, and it's something like that, and they don't do that for any other body, like at all. And it's like just feels so targeted and specific that it was so gross to me. Stop doing that, movies. Let's. The solution is let's put more funding behind black creators, because it's not that I want white people. Well, I do want white people to not write that, but if there is the market is saturated. We've heard enough from white directors, white male directors, most of all. Let's less of them, please.
Yeah, take a seat.
Yeah, take a seat. How about you? Your favorite watches?
I really like The Green Knight. I need to watch that one again. I thought that one was pretty good.
That Patel is so. Mwah.
Yeah, he's excellent, and my boy Barry Keoghan is in it, so I'm always happy. Did you see The Killing of a Sacred Deer?
Yeah.
The guy who tortures the family.
The young guy?
The young guy, yeah.
All I remember is that he's a young little guy.
Oh, he's one of my favorite dudes. He's Irish, but he usually plays an American guy. He's actually in the new Irish movie with Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell. Have you seen the previews for that one?
Yeah, I've seen the preview. I remember handsome Colin Farrell.
Yeah. So I want to see that one. But anyway, so The Green Knight was good. Watcher, did you watch on Shudder?
Watch that.
Did we watch it together? Yeah.
So.
I was impressed by that one. Thesis, I rewatched, and I do want to do a mini on that one. And then I had never seen Abre los Ojos, which is another movie by Alejandro Amenabar. He uses two of the same actors from Thesis. Mm-hmm. And have you ever seen Vanilla Sky with Tom Cruise? And okay, so that was the remake of Abre los Ojos. But and I've seen Vanilla Sky countless times.
Yeah.
But this one is better, I think. So that was my September.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, so this is the movie that I picked, and really I found The Creeping Flesh as just a sister movie to this, just because I really wanted to do this movie. So, some background on the movie itself. Hold on. Japanese title of Yokai 100 Ghosts is Yokai Hyaku Monogatari, which is just 100 Ghosts. It was made by Daiei Film, directed by Kimiyoshi Yasuda, and written by Tetsuro Yoshida. And apparently, it was based off of Shigeru Mizuki's 1960 to 1969 manga series, Hakaba Kitaro, also known as Gegege no Kitaro, about a demon boy and his adventures with yokai. So I thought that was interesting. And it is 80 minutes, and cast includes Jun Fujimaki, Ryotaro Gomi, and Takashi Kanda. And just some interesting background about the film in general and Japanese practical effects. So this film, again produced by Daiei Film, makes really extensive use of special effects, but specifically the name in Japanese is tokusatsu, which is one of the most popular forms of Japanese entertainment, but only a really small portion of them actually make it outside of Japan. But here are some really famous ones that did make it outside. Godzilla, and the Super Sentai series, which was adapted into the Power Rangers. Mm-hmm. And I think lots of horror movie lovers will agree. I just think practical effects are so good. Even if they look a little bit dinky at times, I will take a million looking dinky monsters over shitty CGI blood. If I see another CGI blood splatter in a movie, I'm gonna McFreaking lose it. That is so... It looks so bad. It never looks good. Don't do that. So, this movie begins in the Edo period. So, we start with Mr. Tajimaya, played by Kanda, working for the magistrate Lord Uzen of Hota. That is Ryutaro Gomi. So they buy a local village's shrine. This shrine has no gods attached to it right now, but there is a tenement house attached to it that a bunch of people live in. They want to tear it down and build a brothel. Just seems like, not a good thing to do to a shrine and displace a bunch of people. The caretaker, Mr. Gyohei, is like, hey, you guys can't do this. And they beat the shit out of him. Beat him so bad, he dies.
Yeah.
Like, damn. And so all of them are powerless because Tajimaya has actually used basically bribery. The guy who owns the shrine and the tenement place, his wife was really sick, and Tajimaya had been like, hey, I can get you this really good medicine from Holland to save her. And yes, Tajimaya was like, hey, listen, I can get you this medicine from Holland to fix your wife. Starts charging him out the wazoo. The payments, he keeps increasing the price, and eventually the owner of the tenement house and the shrine put that up as collateral. And he's like, this guy, now I'm realizing he must have planned all of this. So he has to give him 30 gold pieces. He doesn't have it. So the arrangement is also completely legal. So Tajimaya and Uzen are like yucking it up, having a party. They bring in huge barrels of sake, celebrating this acquirement of land. Because Uzen remarks that, hey, it's the Edo period. Land is the most valuable thing you can have, and they've just stolen it. Tajimaya and Uzen then are going to have a little celebration. So with the upper crust of the area, they have the 100 Monsters ceremony, also known as Hyaku Monogatari Kaidan Kai. So, and it's a Buddhist tradition where tales of yokai are told, and after which you have to perform a curse elimination ritual to avoid yokai from appearing. And I looked up a little bit about this ceremony because it is real and based off of something real. So the exact origins are unknown, but I love this tale of perhaps the first one that happened, because they first believed that it was played amongst the samurai class as a test of courage. In Ogita Ansei's 1660 nursery tale, Otogi Monogatari, a version of the game was described in which the narrative tells of several young samurai telling tales in this fashion. In the tale, as one samurai finished the 100th tale, he began to extinguish the candle when suddenly he sees a giant gnarled hand descend upon him from above. While some of the samurai cowered in fear, a swipe of his sword revealed the hand to be merely a shadow of a spider. I thought that was so cute. So it grew and grew in popularity to then, go not just from the aristocrats and the samurai to just everybody. So they also combined a new printing technology that then created a boom, a publication of Kaidan-themed books that would appropriate tales from both Japan and China. And Kaidan, that's basically a ghost tale. So in 1677, the first Kaidan Shu was published, known as Shokuku Hyaku Monogatari, or 100 Tales of Many Countries. And it was hugely popular. I thought that was so interesting.
So is the idea that when you tell the story, there's the potential for like manifesting, like bringing into being?
I don't think that necessarily. I think it's kind of like in a Bloody Mary way. If you're telling the story and you extinguish the candle, and I think it's supposed to be like ooh. And then the last part is truly the most intense, because if you don't do this, you'll get haunted. So I guess, extinguishing it every time, it must, and let's say, imagine if the candle blew out on its own, you'd be like, ooh, So it seems really fun. And I just love hearing about things people did way back when, because I feel like just reminds me that we've always been like this. Like the idea of people in the 1600s and 1700s telling ghost stories. I love that. It just makes me happy.
I also think that's really cool because, people in where we live in the 1600s were not telling ghost stories, or if they were, that was considered, to be the work of the devil or something like that. So that's fascinating that, it's almost like, for entertainment, in Japan to do this just kind of for fun.
Yeah. And like the way it should be. yeah, it's interesting when you hear about people getting it right. Like, I think about that with, I briefly took a class, but then dropped it because I was just taking too many classes. But it was LGBTQ history of literature, and it will both make you very interested, but also very sad because, like, for instance, there's so many great stories of indigenous peoples and just how, for a lot of, like, cultures, being trans was, like, not a bad thing. It was, like, it could even be considered, like, wow, you're next level. That's amazing. But then the only records we have of these things are from the shitty colonists who are writing, like, these fucking freaks, did this and this and this. So it's sad that that's the only written stuff we have. And also that there were shitty colonists. But it's so interesting to hear stuff like that of, like, cultures way, a time way before this where it was like, yeah, that's fine. Who cares?
Yeah.
And that people still can't get that right now. Like, come on, guys. If people in the 1600s could get this right and you're not getting it right now, okay. Also, the man telling these stories is really great. Like, his bottom teeth are all nasty, and
yeah.
I love all the costumes. Some things look a little bit like they don't look perfect. You can tell some people are wearing wigs, but I just think there's so much more earnestness in a production like this than in one where everything supposedly looks perfect, but probably looks like shit.
I just gotta say, I don't really think we've perfected wig technology. Like,
no,
I don't know why, but today we'll see stuff. I'll be like, wig.
Yeah, wig. Really, you have to get Black women involved because I have seen some TikToks. I really enjoy watching. There's all these amazing TikToks, and not just TikToks, but YouTube videos as well, of, like, Black women sharing, like, just, them and the masterful art of laying, like, the hair down, and, like, there's no way you could tell. Like, no way. Like, employ some Black women. They will help you, I think. So we don't hear all 100 stories, of course, but we do hear, we see one. So the master of the ceremony tells of two fishermen who, they're two ronin, it seems like, masterless samurai, who are warned by this monk to not fish in that river. This monk is like, don't do that. Don't do it. And they're like, okay. And the monk doesn't leave. He's like, hey, don't do that. Like, you're going to be cursed. And they're like, get out of here or we're going to beat the shit out of you. So he's like, okay. But he's still kind of watching from the sideline. So they're fishing and they catch one. They think they see something bubbling in the water, but they're like, nah, it's fine. And we hear, like, a crack of lightning. They go home and God, like, God help women born of any time. Like, the man whose wife it is, he's just like, here, take this fish, prepare us some fish, but before that, get some sake, and she has to, like, bow for him and be like, oh yes. Oh, so they're drinking sake and she prepares the fish and brings it to them, and one of the ronin is, like, kind of looking at it like, I don't know if I want to eat that. And the wife remarks, she's like, sorry it took me so long. I keep washing, but the blood won't come off my hands.
Red flag.
Huge red flag. I'm going to call him husband samurai to distinguish. He's like, just keep washing your hands then. And he starts eating. He's like, this shit's good. The other samurai is just, again, still like, I don't want to eat this. And he's like, hey, like, don't be all superstitious. You're going to spoil my meal. So he's like, you know what? I'll go get us some more sake. Gets up and the wife is still washing her hands off. And he's like, still at it, huh? And she's like, yeah, it just won't come up. So then he's getting the sake. And at one point he turns around and she's just looking at him and, like, kind of smiling. And he's like, turns back around. And then we see her head begin to extend. And he turns around, sees it, and is like, what? Of course. And so I looked this up. This is a Rokuro Kubi. Translation, pulley neck. And, this movie doesn't really get into the whole, the actual mythology around these creatures, but I thought I would share. It says, unlike most yokai, and by the way, I got this from yokai.com. Great website. Very good. Unlike most yokai, which are born as monsters, Rokudo Kubi and their close relative, Nuke Kubi, are former humans, transformed by a curse resulting from some evil or misdeed. Now, I thought this did kind of fit. Perhaps they sinned against the gods or nature. Perhaps they were unfaithful to their husbands. In many cases, their husbands or fathers actually committed the sin. By some cruel twist of fate, the men escape punishment and the women receive the curse instead. And this curse only affects women. I thought that was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, the one of them, freaks out, legit dies by fright. And the husband is kind of like, what's going on? And, the wife says, oh, no, nothing, dear. And we see her silhouette in the screen. And then we see, because he's like, hey, what about that sake? She's like, oh, coming. And then we see her head begin to extend again, like goes all the way across the screen and peeks out the other side and is like, here you go, dear. And of course the guy freaks out. It's so good. And she wraps her neck around him like a snake and kills him.
Yeah. That was really awesome.
It's so eerie. It's so creepy. And it looks great.
Yeah. And that there's a puppet involved or, but it's so cool. And just the thought of just this woman's neck, like extending, like a giraffe, like, just goes on. And then the fact that it is strong enough to kill a man, like,
so scary. And of course she's like laughing the whole time. So then we see, the next day, the monk is by, the water, and this woman comes up. It's the wife, and she says, excuse me, did you see two men fishing around here? They were supposed to be back, but they never came home. The monk says, oh, it's so funny. He's like, I'm so sorry. He goes and he shows her. They were struck by lightning and killed, and their dead bodies lay there. And he's just like, I told them not to take the fish. So they extinguish that candle. So they extinguish the candles, and the master of the ceremony is like, okay, now we need to perform the ritual for the end of the ceremony, because if we don't, we're all fucked, basically. And Tajimaya is like, I got my own ritual. And he's like, we don't need to do that. And it never gets completed. So I also want to mention Tajimaya we see has a son. Because this whole time, Tajimaya is not a part of the magistrate yet. He is trying to get a position, and Uzen, who's already a part of the magistrate, is trying to grow in position. So Tajimaya has to introduce his son to Uzen, and Tajimaya's son is, how should we say, I think this character acts just like a young boy, but it's played by an adult man, so like I don't know what the point is supposed to be, but he's really cute. Like this.
Oh, he's sort of mentally slow.
I wonder if that was what they were going for, but he just acts like a kid though. Like everything he's doing, you could see a kid doing.
Childlike, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And he's, obviously a high magistrate person is in Tajimaya's house. He's expecting his son to, be very respectful. And he's like, who's this? and he's like, this is Uzen, and he's the high magistrate. Or Uzen says, hi, I'm Uzen. Dad goes, he's the high magistrate, and he goes, no, he's not. He's Uzen. So his dad's like, get the fuck out of here. By chance, I believe these two people walking home from the ceremony, the wife is like, I'm kind of scared. We didn't do that ending of the ritual. And the husband's like, no, it's fine. I don't remember exactly what gets them, but they drop all these gold pieces. And then the owner of the tenement house gets his hands on them. It's 30 gold pieces. Now he can, because there's a yokai in the water that grabs a hold of them, basically. So now he has enough money to buy the house back. So he's going to go leave in the middle of the night to go talk to Tajimaya and give him his gold pieces. Well, Tajimaya basically gets somebody to murk him, and he's stabbed in the middle of the night, and body just like thrown, by this like swamp. So then, obviously everybody in the village is upset, and we kind of get more, like there's this, really cruel moment where Tajimaya says to the guy's daughter, like, hey, if you come work for me, then, I'll let the tenement house go. She goes to work for him, and he's like, JK, psych! Yeah. And he's like, being the wife of the magistrate, like, what could be a better honor for a woman? And obviously the whole time she's just crying and is like, no, let me go. And they won't let her go. Well, there was a Ronin that was living in the tenement house who nobody really knew much about, but, he's a dashing young man. We can tell he's the hero. He pops up and he's like, no, she's coming back with me. So he saves her. And so later we just see more now spooky occurrences. One of my favorite is Tajimaya's son. We see him and he is drawing a what is called a casa obake. And Mom, you posted it in your Instagram post for it. It's a pretty well-known yokai of this umbrella with one eye, its tongue sticking out, and one leg. And so Casa Obake, it's also known as Katakasa Kozo, which means paper umbrella priest boy. It says, yokai.com says, these silly looking yokai are transformations of Chinese style oiled paper umbrellas. They have a single large eye, a long protruding tongue, and either one or two legs upon which they hop around wildly. They're not particularly fearsome as yokai go. Their favorite method of surprising humans is to sneak up on them and deliver a large oily lick with their enormous tongues, which may be traumatic, even though it's not dangerous. So, Tajimaya's son is painting all over, like a kid drawing on the walls. He's painting this Casa Obake all over. And I love this scene. Traditionally animated, one of them starts to move and dance around and then eventually, manifests. And it is scary looking, but it's also really cute. And he's just like, woo, like, this is awesome. And it licks him on the face and he's like, oh, that's gross. But he's also sticking his tongue out at it. It's a really sweet scene. So then he goes back to, his mom and he's like, there's a yokai, like there's a yokai in my room. And so everybody goes and gathers and they just see the walls painted. So then he gets in trouble. But that is like one of the best scenes. So Tajimaya and Uzen's lackeys go to kick everybody out of the tenement. They're finally going to tear it down. But then the lackey is accosted by a Nopura Bo. They're known for frightening humans, but apparently are pretty much harmless. What happens is a very Twilight Zone-esque moment where, there's all this like ruckus happening on, and the obviously the tenants of the tenement house won't leave and they're fighting back. And he goes to talk to one of his men and he turns around and he just has a smooth face with no features.
Oh, yeah.
And he, of course, freaks out and he's like, what the fuck? He turns around and all of his men are like that. And so this is a Nopura Bo. They appear at first as ordinary human beings, sometimes impersonating someone familiar to the victim before causing their features to disappear, leaving a blank, smooth sheet of skin where their face should go. And it's very creepy. He runs back. He sees Tajimaya's son, and he's like, I saw a yokai too. I saw everybody's faces turn smooth. And in a great moment, the son turns and is like, oh, like this? And also has the smooth. He freaks out, goes to talk to Uzen, and he's like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Like, now you're talking like my son. So they're going to go investigate Tajimaya and Uzen. They're walking in the swamp area around where the owner of the tenement houses was killed. They get attacked by, and I couldn't decide which one this was, but it's a giant woman's face in the sky. They use green screen for this. But again, I think it looks really good. Like, she's like a giant, scary, like, face-painted woman just laughing at them, and they're trying to attack her with swords, and they can't. So, some people thought that this was an okubi, but I also found a listing for a yokai called a kerakera onna, which means cackling woman, and I felt like that fit a little bit more, because the okubi is, like, not supposed to be very harmful. but this woman meant them harm. So the Kerekere Onna are gigantic, horrid yokai, usually found in red light districts. Their name comes from the cackling sound of their laughter, and they appear as enormous middle-aged women in colorful brothel kimonos with thick makeup and slathered on lipstick. They skulk around in alleyways and on empty roads, dancing, laughing, and mocking the profession that worked them to death. They are rarely seen outside of the pleasure district, but that's the place responsible for their creation. And it says that when a man passes a lonely street or alley haunted by a Kerekere Onna, she unleashes a horrible shrill cackle that can only be heard by him. A weak-hearted man faints right on the spot. But one who has the constitution to flee finds that no matter where he goes or who he turns to, the cackle echoes in his ears. Nobody else can hear it. Eventually, these men are driven insane by the incessant laughing. Repayment for the lifetime of abuse the Kerekere Onna went through.
Holy shit.
Right? Like, damn. And
so do all of these ghosts go back to the 1600s?
Yeah, and I think their sources are varied, but for instance, the one that I showed you yesterday of called a Shirime, it's basically a butthole yokai, and it's totally harmless. It just wants to fuck with people, and it just is a giant blinding eye in somebody's butthole. I saw that one was sourced to a haiku written by somebody, this guy, I think his name's Buzan, in the 1600s, and he apparently wrote a lot of the stories that eventually became yokai. But they're probably, from all over the place too.
Yeah.
And so these guys do go crazy. They're trying to attack it, and some other yokai kind of pop up. And Uzen, this is one of my favorite horror tropes. He tries to kill her and ends up accidentally stabbing Tajimaya, who dies. But, honestly, the world is better off. So Uzen goes back to his house, and it's all yokai everywhere. And he basically is just going crazy. Like, he looks all haggard now. Like, he looks like he's going mad. So Yasutaro, who is the samurai, he actually reveals himself to be an agent of the region's high magistrate. And he sees Uzen and he's like, oh, the guilt must be driving you crazy. And he's like, well, you're never going to become a part of the high magistrate because I'm about to tell them everything that you did, abusing your power and whatnot. So then Uzen just goes into the other room and kills himself.
Yeah.
So then in the final scene, the 100 yokai, and I don't know if it's 100, but a bunch of yokai come out and dance throughout the village. They carry in their own huge barrels of sake and are basically just celebrating the death of these assholes. And I just love this. I love this story of, humans are the real monsters. And because, this is a thing that does happen now. Definitely happened then. Like, imagine how much easier corruption's always been easy to get away with, but, these people had no power, and these guys fucked around, found out, and paid for it. It's so satisfying.
Yeah, and again, we didn't, meticulously plan this, but that's basically, what happens in the Creeping Flesh as well.
It's amazing. Like, I was just trying to find anything made around the same time that had creature effects, and I had no idea that it was gonna match up that well. I wanted to talk about one more yokai that is seen in it. There's a yokai called Surebe Otoshi. So they appear as just heads. Not exactly the Daruma, but just like a guy's head, giant head. And so it says, according to the oral legend about Kuchitanba, which is the southern part of the Tanba region of Kyoto, recorded in the Taisho period local research documentation book, the Kuchitanba Kohishu, it is said that the Hoki section of the village of Sogabe in the Kyoto prefecture, a Surebe Oroshi would suddenly drop down from a kaya tree and make a sniggering laugh saying, "Has your night work ended? How about let's drop a bucket, gigi?" And then rise above the tree again. Also in the Teta section of the Sogabe village, Surubei Oroshi are said to appear as a severed head that would drop down from an old pine tree and then eat and feed on someone, and after that not appear for about 2 to 3 days, and then they would appear again. In the village of Tomimoto, an eerie tree wrapped with ivy was feared for the appearance of Surubei Oroshi from there. So these stories were everywhere, and I think that they are most commonly depicted, or most people might remember if you've seen Spirited Away. Yababa has these 3 green heads in her parlor. Mm-hmm. Those are Surubei Otoshi.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I love this movie. I would highly recommend if you're just looking for it's honestly a cute movie. Like, with cool effects, and I'm gonna watch the other 2 at some point, and yokai are so fascinating, you could lose hours looking into them, so highly recommend that.
So how did you find this movie, Mac?
I found it on Shudder. I just was going through Shudder's latest movies, and I saw, because it's a trilogy, and they all had really cool posters, and I was like, you know what? Click!
Yeah, and it's 80 minutes, and you have helped me understand it so much better, because I think I've watched it like 3 times, and just you explaining it makes me want to watch it again, because
it is hard to kind of get everything, but because honestly, when I looked up, shout out to the Encyclopedia of Science Fiction, because I could not find a summary for this movie absolutely anywhere, and they were the ones who did it, so shout out to them. When I read through what they had written, that also I was like,
There's one effect that I really liked, and it's basically the face in the water. Mm-hmm. Like, and there's something, and again, we didn't plan this, but this is another thing that kind of scares me. It's just like giant beings. Yes. It's just like super scary. Like, what was that one movie in the woods with the really giant,
The Ritual?
Yes.
Yeah.
Scary as fuck to think that this creature can like lash you to a sequoia tree or something.
Yeah.
No, it's just like really scary. So both of these movies have that in different degrees.
They tap into it.
It's kind of funny. Hey, Mac, I wonder what Letterboxd has to say about it.
Let's see. Okay. First we see Mac. I love how you wrote my favorites. Yeah, I listed my favorite movies as The Handmaiden, I Saw the Devil, Dead Set, and Cats from 1968, not 2019.
Not 68, 98.
98, excuse me. Yeah, 1968. I said, absolutely love this. It's so fun and satisfying. The special effects were so incredible, and I gave it 4 Surubei Otoshis. Calrissian gave it 1.5 stars and said the monster segments were real cool, but nothing else really grabbed me. It's short, but felt long. Mia gave it 2 stars and said, giant floating head kicks ass. Umbrella Ghoul is a nasty little fucker. So it seems like you liked it.
Yeah.
From Beyond 91 gave it 5 stars, said watch this at the start of the day, and I was totally pumped for the day. Special effects are fucking brilliant. Loved them. It's short, quick, and fun. I love this idea that somebody watched this in the morning, and they were like, today's gonna be a good day. That is so funny. Mike gave it 5 stars and said, best movie I've seen since Videodrome. I guess seen it. I've seen since I watched Videodrome twice in a row.
Yeah.
Wow. Salt M. Bank gave it 4.5 stars and said 100 monsters. And the most horrid monster of all, Capital. And humans are the real monsters.
You know? Yeah.
What have we learned? Or what would you rate it? How many heads?
I think I gave it 3.5.
Fair.
Yeah. But now that I understand it more, it takes on a different meaning. So I'll have to revisit that, But what I've learned is don't fuck around if you don't want to find out.
Right? If the person holding the ceremony is like, do this, to make sure you don't. And then you're like, no, I'm not going to do it. And he's like, I'm being serious. Do the ceremony.
And listen to old people.
Yeah, if an old man tells you not to fish, don't do it.
Don't laugh at the poor man.
I know this man looked like Father Time. Like he was the shortest, oldest man, and they were like, "We're gonna beat the shit out of you."
I guess it's probably not a good. It's probably not a good business plan to tear down a shrine.
Yeah, maybe that's not a good thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, we know who wins the You Fool Award. It was all these fools who didn't finish the ceremony. But do you have a favorite scene?
I did like Tajimaya's son. He's so freaking delightful.
And the animation is just so cute. Like, it's so unexpected. And
like basically his drawing comes to life and jumps from the wall onto the floor.
And he's just like dancing and being cute. And then the son is just like sticking his tongue out and like closing one eye to be like him. It's so sweet.
Yeah, it's really nice. Should we turn to Creeping Flesh?
Let's do it.
So the brief plot summary from IMDb says a Victorian-age scientist returns to London with his paleontological Vagabond's discovery from Papua New Guinea. Unfortunately, when exposed to water, flesh returns to the bones, unleashing a malevolent being on the scientist's family and friends.
First off, what friends?
Yeah, this poor dude.
No, I don't feel bad for him at all.
Not at all?
Not at all.
Okay. Well, we'll get to it. This was directed by Freddie Francis, who was the director of photography for The Innocents, which was discussed in episode 22 with Quinn, written by Peter Spenceley and Jonathan Rumbold, starring Christopher Lee from The Wicker Man, discussed in episode 26, Peter Cushing, and Lorna Heilbronn. It was released on the 12th of February, 1973, and it has a running time of 94 minutes. I watched it on Prime. Okay, so I will probably have to pause a little bit as I'm, like, reading this, because for some reason, the plot of this just, like, left my brain. Like, I don't know. I just was like, what happened? It's not a difficult plot to keep straight or anything like that, but I just want to, one thing I don't want to forget to mention is the stuff with the daughter, because I think that's like the most interesting part of the whole movie. But Peter Cushing plays Dr. Emmanuel Hildern, who in the very first scene is explaining to a young doctor that he's made this incredible discovery, but he needs help because he thinks that he's found a physical manifestation of evil, and it's a living being. And there was a plan for this evil to engage in a fight between these giants that are evil and these giants that are good, but he has fucked with the plan, and, the potential for evil that is going to be unleashed upon the world is there. So he needs help. And the lab, I noticed this right away too. I don't know if you did too, but it's just decorated in this really sparse way, and almost looks like the set of a play or something like that, just to sort of suggest that it's a lab. But then we go back into the story in flashback.
I'm glad you explained that because I missed that somehow. Oh. What really stuck in my mind was the stuff with the daughter, mostly.
Yeah. So, in the flashback, he recounts his return in 1894 from an expedition in New Guinea where he discovered an abnormally large humanoid skeleton. And what he's hoping is that his discovery will earn him the prestigious Richter Prize. But he also receives word that his wife, who's been institutionalized for years, has died. and she was in the care of other Dr. Hildern, Christopher Lee, who is his brother. I mean, DNA is funny, but there's no way that these two are brothers.
I just love that Christopher Lee, I feel like he is so coded from the get as like evil man. Like
yes.
He has this like goatee and like mustache, and I feel like he just looks like compare him to the Wicker Man, where like I just feel like it's a night you would never believe that these were the same men.
Yeah, he's really villainous and delicious.
He's the best.
So Emmanuel goes to the asylum to meet with his brother, and the brother James, played by Christopher Lee, says that he's done a study of Hildern's wife, and he wants to reveal his study to the scientific community in the hopes of winning the Richter Prize. I just think that's so funny.
Both of them are the worst in a way.
They really are.
They don't want to help anybody. They just want to like gain accolades and attention.
Yeah, but that they're in competition with each other, at this age, it's so fucking ridiculous. I don't know. It's funny. So now he's like, oh shit, my brother's, wants to do this too. So he goes home and he wants to, conduct his research, and he starts washing, he starts washing the skeleton as you might do. But he makes the discovery that when the bones are exposed to water, flesh grows on the bones. And so there's a little bit of awesome stop motion photography. What year was this? Hold on. 73.
It's great.
It's great, and it's also really gross.
Yeah, nasty.
It's really disgusting. And he reviews the myths of ancient peoples where the skeleton was discovered. And yes, in the myths, they all tell that these giants will be awakened by rain. He thinks that if he can isolate the cells from the finger, which has grown this flesh, if he can isolate those cells, he can create a sort of a vaccine against evil. So, sure. I mean, that's probably the way things work in 1894 or ever. So he figures, I'll just test this on the monkey that lives in my lab.
Yeah,
And he's like, well, that's good enough. Let me, proceed with the rest of my experimentations. Okay, so meanwhile, Hildern's daughter Penelope finds out that the mother she thought died years ago.
Because he's been lying to her.
And there's this whole other thing where Penelope is not allowed to leave the house.
And when he comes home, like the only thing she wants is to spend time with him. And so she gets the maid he forgets the name of the maid and whatnot. And she's like, I also had to fire like half the staff because we don't have any money. But all she wants is to eat some breakfast with him. And, the maid prepares it and then goes to get him. And he's like, no, like I'm working. And it's so, cause she knew it was coming. Like, it keeps building up, and then when he says no, she's like, well, yeah. And she tries again, and then he's like, oh, yes, sorry, of course. Like, he's the worst from the get. And he's also just such a little, it's, like, I'm not saying Christopher Lee's character is obviously bad. He's evil-coded, but at least he has a fucking backbone. Cushing, or Emmanuel, when he's talking to him in any scenes, he just looks like such a sad, not even cute, but like little worm. Like he's just so like, oh, you're better than me, and I'm, and he can't even be a real good dad to his daughter. Like he's nothing. I hate him.
So here's where it gets interesting. So Penelope's mom wasn't insane. She was
a
just
woman.
A very sexually liberal woman. She liked to have a good time, And, but, you know, and that's what we, the audience, see is this woman who, you know, she dresses in a really extravagant way and she likes to dance. Red. And, you know, she looks like she has a good, you know, likes to have a good time. And, and so, well, what do you do with somebody like that? You throw them in an institution because women's sexuality is very scary.
I think there was also a point, like maybe she was like, I don't know what they were going for. Like maybe she was mentally ill in some way, because there is a part in the flashbacks to her where she does look a little bit like stressed out and like tired a little bit. Like definitely not like, oh, this woman's a danger. Like she's put in like a lifetime asylum, you know, as if she's gonna hurt herself or others, and she's not.
Yeah, and so she's locked away in a cage, and Penelope, she has agency, but she doesn't exercise it until now. So she's basically a prisoner in the house, I guess, because her dad thought that maybe she had the same thing. She was afflicted with the same thing that her mother had. So
is it kind of like, did he get her institutionalized?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like he keeps saying, you know, like at one point he says to Penelope, like, you know, I just thought I was doing what was best for you. And it's like, fuck this guy. He's the worst.
So there's this whole scene where Penelope goes upstairs and she sees all her mother's things and she puts on her mother's old red dress.
Because he kept her room the exact same, but she's never been allowed to go in there. Like, that would be normal if your mom died. Like, that would be normal, is if you wanted to help your child, you'd be like, well, here, like, you can get to, you wouldn't be like, well, here's a room with anything you could ever know about her, and you can't go in it. And you live here. You can't leave.
It's so fucked. So she's sitting, you know, with her back facing the door, and Cushing comes to the door and he thinks it's his dead wife, and his daughter turns around. So that's a little bit of a creepy moment. So he's worried that Penelope, who's extremely upset, obviously, at you know, discovering this lie. So you know, the doctor does, of course, the most logical thing. He injects her with the serum, you know, taken from the flesh of the...
Like, what? That's such a nuclear response. No wonder she hasn't done anything up to now. Because, like, the second she says the normal thing of, you lied to me, I'm upset at you, he's like, I'm going to take a finger where I just saw the flesh. Hey, we also get a shot of Monkey. It's twitching in the cage, like, doesn't look good. And he's like, yeah, I'll try this on my daughter.
Yeah, and we do see that the next day, we see that the monkey has gone berserk. It has gained enough strength to escape from the cage, and it has just wrecked the lab.
This is a great scene because his assistant is like, oh, wow, like, shame this happened. Well, good thing we didn't test on any people. And then Emmanuel's like, and it just runs out the door. I like laughed out loud.
So Penelope has gone into town, and she has, I don't know, danced on a couple of tabletops or something like that, and she is mistaken for a sex worker, and this man forces himself on her, and she like scratches his face.
Yeah, she claws his face. When he leaves, he says to the bartender, you know, because he's just like, fuck this, and leaves. And he's like, if I wanted that, I'd ask for it. I forgot how funny this movie is.
Well, also, I forgot to mention that somebody from the institution, this kind of like hulking, like ape of a man.
Oh, yeah, this is very random.
Yeah, he's also escaped the institution, and he is in town with Penelope as well.
Well, there's this guy, you know, in the bar also tries to feel up on her. she breaks a bottle and kills him, which I'm like, good for her. Both times. I'm like, good, you know what? Good for her. But then they're like, go get her. She runs away, goes to this barn, and is about to get caught. But then that guy is there. She then turns around and kills him. I love that. I was like, she is a girl boss.
Yeah, I mean, the scene in the bar is very reminiscent of the scene in the lab with the monkey. So, you know, that's echoed in both settings. And yeah, she just is sort of like, oh, look out the window. Oh, oops. She like,
and then his fingers are hanging on, and she finds a paddle and just. And all these people are just watching, like.
So the men from James's asylum apprehend Penelope, and they bring her back to the asylum, and they do a blood test on her. And it's so funny because when we see the blood under the microscope, it's just like these crazy.
They're like these black cells with all
with
these
hairs.
Yeah, and
they just like attack the other cells.
That's how it works. And I just love Christopher Lee's like, oh shit.
I got the Richter Prize in the bag. What?
Which is he just had been saying before he finds out about there's so many great like setups to great moments where he's talking to his own assistant and he's like, well, sadly, it's considered unethical to practice on humans. So, because he's been testing on the inmates, but he wants somebody who's not crazy. And he's like, the only people we can test on are inmates. And then, he finds out about this, about the daughter being there, checks her blood, and is like, oh, like legit says out loud, like, oh, my brother did it, so it's fine if I do it now.
So James figures he's going to steal his brother's research, including the skeleton. So he sends a lackey to get the skeleton, but wouldn't you know, a rainstorm ensues, and the carriage that's taking the skeleton overturns, and the skeleton escapes.
Because it's kind of insinuated that the thing is overturned and like this really intense rain is because of the skeleton.
Yeah. Okay, so Peter Cushing's character is trying to follow the carriage, but he turns back when he sees this cloaked figure.
And we know that it's escaped because when Christopher Lee comes, because he leaves because his lackey is trapped under it. When he comes back, his like throat is like slashed open.
Yeah,
that was good too.
That was good. So Hildern finds that the skeleton's fleshy finger has begun to move. So he throws the finger into the fire. But now the skeleton, which now has all of its flesh, returns to the house and spares Hildern's life, but it takes one of his fingers. So then we get the whammy at the end here. So Hildern finishes. We get back in the present, and Hildern finishes his story, and the camera pulls back, and we see that he's not in a lab. He's actually in a cell at the asylum, and across the way from him, yeah, pretty nice, is Penelope, who's now completely insane. And so one of Christopher Lee's assistants is talking to him and is saying, that guy, he's really nuts. He thinks that you're his brother. And he's like, oh, that's so crazy. And, and that Penelope is his daughter. And he says, well, that's pretty normal. Most of my patients want to identify with me because, I'm Christopher Lee after all. And so he's like, well, how long has he been here? Oh, I guess about 3 years. Oh, yes, that's right about the time when I won the Richter Prize. And then last part is we see Peter Cushing and he's pleading for help and the camera just pulls in on his hands gripping the bars, but one of his fingers is missing.
I love that scene. It's so good.
Oh man, this is so fun talking about this.
I know, I want to watch it again now, honestly. The only victim here is Penelope. Like,
oh, absolutely. Well, and her mom.
Well, yes, yeah. Like, to me, I'm like, I don't feel bad for Emmanuel, and I'm like, you get what I mean, like Christopher Lee, but it's like almost in a way he is evil, obviously, but it's like almost in a way I hated Emmanuel like way more. Like I thought he was more evil because he thought to himself that he wasn't, you know?
Yeah.
Like Christopher Lee at least seemed to be like twiddling his fingers and like twirling his mustache. Like he knew what he was about, but here's Emmanuel trying to pretend. And that's almost why I love that scene with Christopher Lee as well, where he's like, well, if he's going to do it, because he's kind of like my holier than thou brother who always thinks he's better than me, experimented on his daughter, you know? So Christopher Lee feels the same way as me. He's like, I don't give a fuck about you. And I loved that.
Wow, I had a lot more sympathy for him until we talked about it.
He's the worst. Little worm.
I didn't find a lot of trivia on the movie, so I thought it might be kind of fun to look at these two men's lives.
Oh.
So Peter Wilton Cushing, OBE, was born on the 26th of May, 1913, and he died on the 11th of August, 1994. He was an ardent vegetarian for most of his life, and he was a patron with the Vegetarian Society from 1987 until his death. He was also really interested in ornithology and wildlife in general. He suffered from nyctophobia from earlier in his life, but
what is that?
So what is that?
Like darkness?
Nycta, that's dark. So being afraid of the dark, I guess.
Yeah, because then it says he overcame it
by forcing himself to go for walks after midnight.
That's
interesting. Several filmmakers and actors have claimed to be influenced by Peter Cushing, including the actor Doug Bradley, who played Pinhead in the Hellraiser horror films, and John Carpenter, who directed such films as Halloween, Escape from New York, and The Thing. Director Tim Burton and actor Johnny Depp both said the portrayal of Ichabod Crane in Sleepy Hollow was intended to resemble that of Cushing's old horror film performances.
I should watch him in something else, because not that I disliked him in this movie, but I didn't feel particularly wowed by him. But if he was that good, I would like to watch other stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of people consider this performance to be one of his best ones. But yeah.
I just feel like, again, he wasn't bad, but I feel like he was so overshadowed by Christopher Lee. Like, anytime I was watching, I wanted there to be more Christopher Lee. And I don't think that's just me, like, having Christopher Lee bias. I feel like he shines more in this.
Yeah. I don't know. Watch it again.
I'll watch it again.
Yeah. Sir Christopher Frank Carandini Lee, CBE, CSTJ, was born on the 27th of May, 1922, and he died on the 7th of June, 2015. He provided the voices for numerous films and video games. Get this! He spoke fluent English, Italian, French, Spanish, and German, and was moderately proficient in Swedish, Russian, and Greek.
Holy shit!
The two of them appeared in 22 films, not including two of Lee's films, in which Cushing was a flashback only, and another where Cushing's scene was cut entirely. Their first film together was 1948's Hamlet, starring and produced by Sir Laurence Olivier. Great film. When acting together, we knew which one of us was the focus and never, never intruded on each other's performance, Lee said. On Cushing's death, Lee said, I don't want to sound gloomy, but at some point of your lives, every one of you will notice that you have in your life one person, one friend, whom you love and care for very much. That person is so close to you that you are able to share some things only with him. For example, you can call that friend, and from the very first maniacal laugh or some other joke you will know who is at the other end of the line. We used to do that with him so often. And then when that person is gone, there will be nothing like that in your life ever again.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
I'm going to cry. That's like this.
That really got me. I read that before, but it really got me. Ooh, I gotta take a minute.
I'm so glad that they could share that with each other and be such good, and that they got to have such a, I mean, being in 22 films and, more technically, like, I'm so glad that they were able to, I don't know, have that friendship. That's so sweet. Oh, that was so sad. I'm like trying not to cry.
Cushing also lost his wife. I had a quote, but I don't have it anymore. But his wife died in 1971, and it really destroyed him. Oh. And yeah, I don't know. I think he said, like, she died in 71. He lived until 94, but he was pretty much destroyed by her death. Oh, and some people think he tried to kill himself, like, on hearing that she had died, but he said that it was a hysterical reaction to her death. But in any case, it really devastated him, and he visibly aged. Wow. After she passed away.
He seems like, based off of that and Christopher Lee's reaction, seems like a guy who had a lot of love, in his heart, and was, I don't know. Rest in peace to both of them.
So, Mac, what phobia is that? Aquaphobia is the fear of water. Ombrophobia is the fear of rain. And megalophobia is the fear of big things.
I got that.
Let's see. So in terms of severed evil giant's bones, severed giant's fingers, how many would you give this movie?
After talking about it more, and I gotta watch it again, I think I would give it 4.
Yeah, I think I'd give it 4 too. What have we learned?
Scientists, man, when I say this as somebody who studied science also, but when people's scientific endeavors involve humans, there's a scary amount of people who might see them as just test subjects. That I love tropes like that. I mean, and it is true to some extent. You hear a lot about the reason medical ethics needs to be taught. Is it based on a real story? That one movie, I forget who it was. Emma something, who in the movie she has cancer and she decides to do not resuscitate, but this guy who's studying her rare form of cancer tries to do that while she's dying and keeps encouraging her to keep living because he wants to keep studying. And so it's all kind of about medical ethics and why
Jesus
that's
Christ.
Important. So
Emma Thompson?
I just feel like
fuck.
That's a scary thing. That's what I learned. Sorry,
I don't know that movie, but that's just really terrifying.
My teacher, I watched that in high school.
No.
Yeah. Also same class where we watched Life is Beautiful. What were they trying to do to us?
I don't know, get you to feel something, Mac.
I did.
I know. Sometimes when I'm working with my little babies, I forget that. I did this talk one time to film. I gave this talk one time when Parasite came out on Korean film and everything to Quinn's class, and I'm showing them all these clips from I Saw the Devil and Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance and stuff. And then there's one clip I showed them from a movie called, I think it's called Miss Granny or something like that. And it's a body swap film, kind of like a body swap film where this old lady wishes she was young. And that's the one they wanted to hear more about, of course, because they're sweet little babies. They don't want to hear about, Shui Min Shik being a cannibal and shit. I'm like terrifying, this whole generation, but it's, oh man, I'm just so drawn to that stuff, you know, and,
Yeah,
but they're
I forget
not.
it too. Like,
Yeah.
also just I realized, like, to my own chagrin sometimes, that my sense of humor is more morbid than I think it is. Like, Kimmy came over and there's a birdhouse that the last tenants left over, and she was like, "Oh, I wonder if any birds live there." And I was like, "No, like, not right now. I'm thinking about cleaning it out." And then I just said, like, half as a joke, half seriously, I was like, "But I don't want to, because what if there's a bunch of, like, dead baby skeletons in there?" And she was just like, "What?" I was like, "Oh." Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's like kind of a weird thing to say.
Well, yeah, it's like, and my therapist is usually very indulgent with me, but you know, when you have those, like when you're on a website and you have to answer certain security questions, well, one of them is, what's your dad's middle name? Mm-hmm. And my dad is dead now. So I was telling her, well, it's nothing. Like, but I can't leave it blank. And she's like, okay, yeah. But you laughed. Okay, thank you. I mean,
that was funny.
Anyway. Okay, well, I'm glad we have each other, at least. All right, so what does Letterboxd have to say about it? Tom Geyer gave it a 0.5 star. More like the creeping disappointment. Am I right? So Tim from Dismembering Horror sort of gave me this idea to include the favorites of the person. And he's got some pretty good ones here. You know, yeah. Alien, The Thing, Mad Max Fury Road, Empire Strikes Back. But Phoenix Down gave it 1.5 stars. Which is scarier, skeletons or the criminally insane? Answer: neither. It's science and or psychiatry.
I agree. That's why I thought the movie was good. Humans are the real monsters.
But then they go on. Premise: what? Effects: weak. Spookiness: Christopher Lee's mustache is a bit scary.
That part's true.
Killatron gave it 4 stars.
Oh. This
is going to be a real corny snooze for lots of people, but it speaks directly to my heart. Cushing and Lee, Victorian colonizer science hubris, the cellular manifestation of evil, a truly spooky final apparition, a very dark ending. I embrace it with my whole being.
I like that.
Hillatron's favorites are Sunset Boulevard, Black Christmas, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
I feel like Hillatron might be gay.
I think Hillatron should be my best friend. Okay, so Holly I gave it 4. Gravely mistitled. I think the flesh creeps exactly once, but nevertheless very engrossing study of mad science and primitive medical practices. A gothy British precursor to 28 Days Later, in a way, bottled rage, plus an unidentified demon thing. And Christopher Lee being a righteous, smarmy asshole. Ace.
I like that.
Well, we did it, Mac.
Woo!
That was fun.
That was fun.
You ready for the outro?
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for this episode and for all your support. It means the world of horror to us truly. Next time, it's Mom's Pick of Genre, and we will be looking at based on a true story movies. We will be watching the SNOWTOWN Murders from Australia and SACRAMENT from the US. Watch-along or WOHOs can look to stream the SNOWTOWN Murders on AMC+, Tubi, Prime, and other places, and for SACRAMENT, Tubi, Canopy, and Prime, among other places. We also want to let you know to look out for some World of Foundational horror shows coming up on The Haunting and Don't Look Now. We are also excited to present some It Means the World of Horror to Me shows with Devin Dimattia from Friendship, Martin and Boaz from Film vs. Film, and Aaron Doyle from First Class Horror. And we're going to get the whole squad together for another end-of-the-year favorite watch show. Woo! Mac! What do you have going on?
Well, I stream every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at twitch.tv/thegayjimmybuffett, and you can also find me on Instagram where I post my art at the Gay Jimmy Buffett as well. I also have an art Twitter called the Gay Jimmy B Art, so it just looks like the Gay Jimmy Bart.
Check it out, Wohos. We would welcome your support in the form of a 5-star review or a thumbs up on your preferred listening platform, and ask that you tell all your friends about us. Remember, we love you, and don't go into the basement.